Welcome back. Now that we've refactored our code to use our new abstract entity base class for all of our persistent model classes, we're ready to go ahead and do the work to create relationships between these two classes. So let's motivate this first by looking at our event class. So I have my event class open, and previously, before we had the ability to store objects in a database, we were keeping track of the type of our events, or because we were sort of categorizing them using this event type enum. So this event type enum just had 4 different values: conference, meetup, workshop, social. Those were showing up in a dropdown that we used. And so when we created a new event, we could say that it was one of those 4 event types. So I want to make my application a little bit more flexible by using our new event category object. Event category is set up to basically do the same thing. It's set up to be a grouping of events that has a given name. So we can group events or categorize events together, and by using event category, we'll get the added benefit that users will be able to create categories through the user interface. So we already set up our application to create categories through a form, and so this just makes our application more dynamic. A user can't actually go in and create a new enum type or a new value for an enum type. So that is a little bit inflexible, even though enums are very, very useful in a lot of situations. A plain Java object that we can let users create and store in the database is going to be more flexible here. So what I want to do, I'm going to go to my event class, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this event type field with a private event category field. Okay, and that'll of course create some errors that we need to go fix. In particular, the first one we see here is our constructor is now incorrect. So I'll go to my constructor signature, remove event type, and I'll say event category. So we've got that being passed in now, and now I just need to change the name of the field and the parameter within there. I'm also going to go down and delete the getters and setters for my type, and then I'm going to need to generate getters and setters for my new field. Okay, that looks pretty good. And so this will basically set up the object-based relationship. In other words, we'll be able to now have an event that has an event category. In order for that relationship to be passed on into the database, we need to do a little bit more work. Okay, and so that's what we're going to do next. And in doing this, we need to think about the type of relationship that exists here. And by that I mean how many events can be related to an event category and vice versa. And as a developer, you typically get to decide this. This is in many cases, there can be a subjective decision. In this case, you might say that an event could be in multiple categories, or an event can be in only one category. In this case, we're going to make the executive decision that our events can only be in one category. So that means that we're going to create from the event side what is a many-to-one relationship. In other words, I can have many events in one category, or there's only one category for many events. And so on the event category field here, I need to provide some JPA annotations to specify what's going on here. So let me first say that I'm going to provide the many-to-one. And this says to hibernate. It says that when we're creating these objects, that we should be able to relate them in the database as in terms of a primary foreign key relationship. I will have one event category for one event category per event. In other words, I can have many events in the same category. Sometimes you get a little tongue-tied here. So that's good. Now, one thing I need to do here additionally is I'm just going to put a validation annotation on here. I want to make sure that this is not null. In other words, that this is required. So I'll add a message here and say category is required. Okay. And that's all I need to do to set up this relationship from the ORM perspective. Now, I still can't actually relate these two different types of objects together because my controller and my views aren't set up to do so. So let's go ahead and work on that code. One thing I'm going to do to kind of get that started, we've done this trick a couple times before, but I want to get rid of all of my event type references. Since we're going to basically replace functionally the event type class with my event category class, I want to get rid of any code. I want to modify any code that uses this class. To do that, I can right-click on the class name and go down to Find Usages. And this will just scan my code and tell me every place that I'm using something of event type. And so the first one we see down here is in the event controller. Let's go there. In my event controller, what I'm doing here is I'm in the display create event form, and this is where I'm rendering the form with the drop down in it that's going to let the user pick which categorization they want for their event, which type of event they're creating. And so rather than pass in the values of the enum for that drop down, I can now pass in the values of the event category. Although before I need to do that, I actually need a repository. So we already created a repository, I just don't have it auto-wired into this particular controller. So I'll create privates, events, category, repository. And now I can use that repository. We created that in a previous class exercise. I can use that repository to fetch all of my events. Okay. Let's see. Now let's rerun our find usages and see what comes up next. So it looks like I have an import statement here in my event controller, which is there. I'm going to, again, use this shortcuts of organize imports, which will remove any unused imports. And now if I rerun it, I don't have any usages of this class in my Java code. So I can actually go ahead and delete this class now, the event type class, that is. Now, we're not done. That's because we use aspects of this class in our templates. Recall that these templates, you don't get the same compile time checking as you do with Java classes. So you have to be a little bit more careful about how you work with Java classes in your templates. So let's first go to the create form. This is the create template. This is where we have that drop down. So in particular, we changed our code so that it now passes in a list of all of the event categories. And in here, I'm still referencing types. So, I still need to change that. So let me change this to events.category, since that's the field name off of events. And then I need to say for each category in categories. And this should be something I'm passing in. And it just strikes me now that maybe I didn't change the name of that to be appropriate. Let's go back to our event controller. And indeed, I'm still calling this types, even though I should probably call these categories. So this is the name of the list of all the categories in the database that we're passing into the template that I want to use in this form. And then we can just use this. And then instead of display name, our field on categories name. That's the label we give to each of our category objects. Okay, so let's go back to the template. This looks, I think this looks good. Okay, now there's one more place where I know we were using the event type, and that's in this this display where we display all of the events in our application. We had a type column. So let me call this category, and then I'll need to rename this down here as well. So events dot category is the field name of an event object, and then I want the name of that category. Okay, that looks good to me. Let's go ahead and restart our application and see what we get. Now, since recall that once when we make changes to our model classes, Hibernate will try to update the tables accordingly when we start our application. And so, in particular, we have an exception here that resulted from that attempted update. Let's read this exception. So it says it's an SQL integrity constraint violation exception. It's a mouthful, but essentially this should be a clue that the application is having some trouble with our SQL constraints. Remember, SQL constraints are just sort of rules that you can put on your table that you won't let be broken by the data in those tables. So it says cannot add or update a child row. A 4-key constraint fails. So this is in the coding events table. It's giving us the name of the constraint, which is just a hash here. Foreign key event category ID. Interesting. So let's go look at our database in MySQL Workbench and see what this could be about. Okay, so I'm in my coding events. Let's go into our tables. Let's just kind of take a look at each of these tables and see what we get. So I'm going to open up the event table. And right away, I see something a little interesting here. So you know that we talked about how Hibernate will update our tables when we change our model classes. And so in particular, we've changed our model this time by adding a category to our event class, right? So over here, we've got this event category object. We've added that to our event class. We took off the type field. But notice that the type field, the type column is still in the database, okay? And that is, you know, might not be what you expected, but it is a rational thing for Hibernate to do. Essentially, when we change our model and we remove a field, Hibernate says, you know what, even though you're telling me to update the table, I don't want to delete any of your data. I want to make you do that just so I don't accidentally delete something that you needed. So in particular, we have this type column that's still here that we don't actually need. So to delete our type column, we're going to go over to the pane on the left, and we're going to go over our event table. There's two ways to get here. You can either click on this little wrench icon right here, which wrench icon usually refers to settings, or I can right click and go down to alter table. And both of those actions will bring up the same view, and this just allows us to edit the properties of our columns within our table. And here I'm going to right click on the type column and say delete selected. And that just removes that from my database. So if I go back and save, apply, that just runs the query. So if I run the query, go back to this, and then I rerun my query here, I should get, there we go, that the type column has disappeared. That's one issue. Let's look at our exception again, though. I don't think we've still solved our exception because it had to do with a foreign key. So if I look at my exception over here, it says that constraint foreign key event category ID. So the event category ID is on the event table. So it's saying this is set up as a foreign key. It's saying references event category, that constraint is failing. And so what does that mean? It means that this foreign key should reference something in the event category table. Let's look at our event category table. And there we go. And we'll see that we do have some objects here, but they have IDs 3, 4, 5. There's nothing with ID 0, which is what we see in our event table. All of these foreign key values here are 0, and the reason they're 0 is because we actually haven't set them at all, and since they're not null, 0 is the default value for a not null integer field. So the constraint violation is saying that none of the objects in our database, or none of the event objects actually reference a proper event category, and we said that our event category should be a required field, so that's violating a constraint. So there are a multitude of ways to fix this, but in development, when you're changing your model classes and you're making updates to the database, one of the things I'll just do when I have this little data in here is I'll just delete it all. So let me go to the events table, and I'll right click on that table, and down below I can truncate the table. Truncate is SQL's fancy term for delete all the data in this table. Okay, so I'm going to truncate my event table. In other words, I'm going to get rid of these rows that have these constraint violations. Okay, and that's fine. So now I don't have any categories referencing invalid category IDs because I don't have any events at all. We can leave the events here. They're fine as is. We don't need to delete those. You could truncate those if you like, but it's okay the way we've got it now. So now let's go back to our application and restart, and hopefully at least that exception will go away. If we're lucky, we won't get any exceptions on startup. So this is just an example of, even though Hibernate and Spring Boot are going to be very helpful in some situations, they can't always do everything for you. And that's also, as I mentioned, a good thing. We wouldn't necessarily want someone automatically updating or deleting data in our tables all the time. Okay, so that started up cleanly. Let's go to our browser and test this out. Localhost 8080. And I don't have any events yet. That's because I deleted them all. That's okay. Let's make sure I have some categories. Still have some categories. Let's go ahead and create an event. And let's see, we have a 500 error, so this is a server error. Let's see what's going on here. It says that an error happened during template parsing, and it's parsing our create template. And not much helpful there. Let's go down to the next exception. Line 29, column 17. That's a good hint. We'll look at that in a second. Bean property category is not readable or has an invalid getter method. Okay, so I know what this is. Let's go to stop our application since it doesn't work. Let's go to our event class. And this is just negligence on my part. I forgot to do something important here. So let's go first. Let's go to that. It said line 29. So let's look at what line 29 says. So line 29 is referencing event.category. And so recall that when we reference a field on an object in a template like this is actually going to call the getter for that field. In other words, the field itself is private. And in this case, I've done two things wrong. One is I named this incorrectly. This is called category, but as we just saw over here, this is actually called event category. So let's fix that. That's one error, but that's not the only error. So if I do that, okay, that'll fix that. But however, there's still the issue here of this needs a getter. So this field needs a getter in order for me to be able to call it. And I don't think I put a getter in here for event category. Oh, no, I did. Okay, that's good. So I thought maybe I had forgotten the getter. That one change then, changing the field name to make it correct, should be good to go. Let's go ahead and restart. And we're almost there. Let's see. Okay. I'll go back here and I'll just try to load the same page again. Ah, there we go. And so we have our create event form. Let's look at our drop down here. Now we have the three names of our three event categories instead of the type enum values. So that's good. Let's do a test. Let's just make sure we can create something. And I'll put this in category, well, just test category seems fine for now. Okay, and that didn't work either. Let's go back here and see what happened. One thing that we need to do here, here we go. So event category. So making a few errors today, but that's okay. Debugging and solving errors is part of the development process. So don't think that if you make mistakes, you're not doing it correctly. That's part of the game. The value here in our field, this is probably the place where the error is, since this is really the only thing I've changed since I last had this application running. The value here should not be an actual event category object, but it should be its ID. That's what we need to be, what we need to have submitted in order for model binding to take place correctly. So I'm going to put my ID there. The other thing I'm going to do is I didn't get an error message here because ostensibly I had an error. I got returned to the same form with the same data, and I didn't get an error message. So I need to just go ahead and create a place for the error messages to live, similar to how we've done this for other fields. So let's say p class equals error, th errors equals events category. Okay, that should actually show us an error message now. And then I'm also going to change the label since we're using category as our name for this rather than type. Okay. So third time's the charm. We'll restart now, and hopefully everything will be going smoothly. Okay, we've got coding events. Now I'm going to have to do a reload on this page. All right, let's go to, let's see. Oh. Leave that in the test category this time. Hit create. And same error as last time. Should have thought that would happen. Let's go back to our index template, and I'm calling this category rather than event category. Okay. So if nothing else, this is a good demonstration of why compilation errors are really helpful. If I could actually see compilation errors in my template, I would have found all these a long time ago. So at least, there's that lesson in here. So fourth time's the charm. So let's see. And I'm going to go to my create template again just to test creating things. Actually, you know what? It should be okay. Let's go to events.index. There we go. All right, much better. So notice that I have category as my label here. This is the name of my category. This is the place that was throwing an error previously. I was trying to reference a property called category off of the event object when the event object has an event category. So just some minor errors in labeling there can cause a lot of problems, and that all works. So let's just poke around to make sure everything else looks okay. let's create a new category. We'll say meetup. That looks okay. Let me add a new event to the meetup category. What do I want to call this? Let's just say the JS meetup. I'll put that in the meetup category, make sure I can do that, and I'll hit create. And great, that all works just as expected. So in recapping this, while we did have a few errors to debug there, that's okay, that's part of the process. We were able to set up a new relationship between our two different persistent entities. Our two different model classes can now be related to each other. So in this case, every event has an event category object attached to it. We said it's not null, so that'll be attached to it. We also saw that if we go back to our database here, and let me go to the event table and refresh, we saw that that relationship on the database side was facilitated by a foreign key field. So we're not storing any data about the actual event category itself. We had, for example, this one we just created, the event category was meetup, but instead of the word meetup or any kind of other data, I just have the ID here, 8, and that's a foreign key into the event category table. The event category table, if I refresh that, should have an ID of 8 there as well. So using our foreign key, primary key relationships there, that's how object relationships get translated when you go to the relational side and you work with ORM systems. In the next video, we're going to create the inverse relationship. We're going to create a way for our application to be such that the event categories know about the events in those categories. Right now, this class does not know anything about the events that are in the category. We're going to create a way to make that inverse relationship possible.